The solution becomes very easy to understand if we have a better understanding of the problem that we're trying to solve. The evolution of AgencyZoom is simply the evolution of the agent needs. It's the evolution of the conversation that we had.
They think that they're going to hire a VA to solve their service issues when the reality is they don't have their processes lined out. So they bring a VA in who has no experience in the insurance industry, and they only make their problems worse because they never had the process to begin with.
So if you give me an idea and I hear it 2 or 3 times, the next thing I'm probably going to be doing is picking up the phone and calling customers and saying, hey, here's an idea that I heard. What do you think of this? AgencyZoom is just a tool that's designed to help the agency grow. And we do that through automation.
Too many times do we get an inbound lead who says they want to buy a policy, but we don't even know what it is that they're trying to solve. What's their problem?
The reason why his sales plateaued is because when he started as a scratch agency, the processes and the things things changed, obviously, now that he has customers. Now he needs new processes.
So many times we think that adding more people cures a sales problem, when in reality, we most often have the tools we need. We're just not using them the right way.
What gets you in trouble, it's not really what you know, it's what you thought you knew, but it wasn't exactly so. Sales is the root and service is the fruit. If you focus your efforts on actually holding a good conversation with that person, you might talk about everything but insurance and you'll sell them way more than what you could probably sell them.
They just go out to market and get as many quotes as they can. They'll automatically find one that fits their budget, when the reality is the cheapest insurance policy is almost always the most expensive.
The main thing when I look at an agency management system, it's all about the data. I mean, the entire industry is data.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. If you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that my philosophy on all of this stuff is, until we sell a policy, until we have to do some level of administration, we are not insurance agencies. We are 100% sales organizations. And sales organizations require different technologies, different approaches than what the average Main Street USA insurance agency does. But it doesn't mean that stuff is not translatable to what you and I do every single day. And so as we get ready for today's episode, I wanted to let everybody know that we have a special guest, Moe Latif from Vertafore, who came over, I believe, in the AgencyZoom acquisition and has remained on board with them. And, you know, Moe had an interesting idea in what he wanted to talk about. And it was kind of like, let's talk about what I didn't know or what we didn't know as we were building AgencyZoom. And I think it's probably a good way to learn the story and figure out why this has made sense for so many agencies out there. So without any further introduction, Mr. Moe Latif from Vertafore, what's up, man?
What's going on? Glad to be here.
Yes, sir. So before we get too much into it, why don't you just give everybody sort of the 50,000 foot overview of who you are? And I mean, I kind of told them how you got to where you're at, but I have a feeling there's a little more to the story than that.
It depends on who you ask. Yeah. So I'm one of the 3 co-founders of AgencyZoom. We started back, it seems like forever ago. I believe back in 2015. And, you know, you mentioned the idea of knowing. In a way, you can almost argue AgencyZoom stemmed out of the concept, out of the unknown and embracing the unknown. And here's what I mean by it. So there's 3 of us, as I mentioned. There's me and Xiaobin Fu, and then there's Toga Demirel. Toga has a huge experience in the insurance industry. He had his own agency. And there's me and Xiaobin. We're sort of like the techie guys. And we were trying to find the problem to solve. We didn't know what problem we wanted to solve. We were just looking for a solution. We knew that we wanted to solve a problem versus innovating something new, right? And we were in corporate America, tired of the day-to-day job, and we just wanted to go and explore and build something. Meanwhile, as we're doing that, Toga, without him even knowing, he's prepping for AgencyZoom. He didn't even know it. How? Well, he had an agency. He was very successful starting that agency and growing it. And he'll do a way better job of telling the story. So just generally speaking, at one point his sales plateaued, and here's where the not knowing and embracing it really came in, whether he knew it or not. And reflecting back on everything, this is how I see things now. Um, he he saw that his sales plateaued. He didn't say, "Oh, I know what to do. I'm gonna go hire more salespeople." He didn't do that, right? He didn't say like, "Oh, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go buy a CRM." He paused and he tried to figure out what is causing it. And he did a very simple exercise that's actually really effective that I still use it and I make it as a recommendation till this day, which is he gave every single one of his team members a piece of paper and said, every time you do a task, write it down. And then if you repeat it, just put a check mark next to it. Right.
Simple enough.
And what he realized was the reason why his sales plateaued is because when he started as a scratch agency, the processes and the things and things changed. Obviously, now that he has customers, now he needs new processes. Now he needs, probably to hire CSRs to manage renewals, because the sales reps are no longer doing only sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he discovered a completely new set of problems that he did not even think about before, and he went on to create a welcome packet. And the purpose of that welcome packet is to address the most common reasons, the most time consumers that the sales producer was being consumed by, which is all the questions that they get from their customers post a policy. Hey, by the way, case of an accident, who do I call again? Who do I call if I need any help? Right. So we created this welcome packet to answer all the frequently asked questions. Once he created that welcome packet, by the time I called him, he already had it working. And I actually called him. So on the other side of the flip side of that story, I watched this YouTube video because I had no freaking clue how to start a company. So I watched this YouTube video. I forgot what the name of the video was. And the guy had recommended that you start calling people and asking them, hey, here's a set of skills that I have. Can you use this set of skills if it was presented to you in a type of service? And he was number 2 on the list. Number 1 was my uncle. He's in the dentistry industry, and obviously that was like a big no. And then I called him and was like, hey, man, can you connect me with Allstate and blah, blah. Here's what I want to figure out a way if we can, utilize our skills to automate certain processes, et cetera. He's like, well, wait a minute. I have this welcome packet that's been really effective, right? So, I mean, had I said like, oh, I know what I'm doing, I'm going to go and create something. Or had he said, I know what I'm doing, I'm just going to go hire sales producers, I wouldn't be sitting here today.
I think that it's interesting, man, because so many times we think that adding more people cures a sales problem, when in reality, we most often have the tools we need. We're just not using them the right way, or we're not using them in the most organized format. And I mean, I go back to even, our own experiences here. We don't use AgencyZoom, not because it's not a great product, but because I got embedded with HubSpot very, very early and have a custom built CRM, which it makes no sense to leave to go to anything else at this point. Yeah. I mean, I'm HubSpot for life at this point. I don't have a choice. I spent too much money having it built to just turn around and leave it. I can tell you that if AgencyZoom was in the mix when I launched my agency, I likely would be an AgencyZoom user because of its simplicity and everything that I know it to do for the members of my community that use it. And has very good reviews overall from everything that I've heard. But, I liken it to, this, you've been in the industry long enough. The insurance industry has shiny object syndrome all the time. Doesn't matter what it is. If there's something new out there and one person who has a loud enough voice uses it, plenty 100%. Of other people are going to jump on board. And I look at it the same way the to me the use of a CRM reminds me a lot of how people misuse VAs too. They think they're going to buy a software that's going to fix their sales problem when the reality is you don't even have a process. You have to have a process in place that you can tailor that software solution to so that you can operate in that process more efficiently. People do the same thing with virtual assistants. They think that they're going to hire a VA to solve their service issues when the reality is they don't have their processes lined out. So they bring a VA in who has no experience in the insurance industry and they only make their problems worse because they never had the process to begin with. I think one of the things with having lead management software, with having a CRM, that's most important is you have to know what your sales process is before you ever bring a piece of software in to try and make it match what your sales process is. Because all, at the end of the day, any of these tools are doing is they're taking the things that are giving you friction along your pipeline or whatever else it is that you're doing, and it's simply removing the friction from the process to where you can focus on the most revenue bearing activities you possibly can. And I just, to me, that is so intuitive. It doesn't make any sense to me at all why people wouldn't adopt that. Yet there are still so many people out there that I talk to that when I ask them, tell me who your agency management system is, tell me who your CRM is. Well, then they give me their agency management system name again. Well, then that's not it. Like your
Yeah.
agency management system is not your CRM, it's your agency management system. And it may do some things for you, but certainly not everything, that a full-blown CRM can do. Now, I'm interested because I know that AgencyZoom, certainly like everything else, has morphed into more than what it originally was. I mean, you guys, from what I understand at this point, you're not just sales, you have service pipelines and other things that are going on. Talk a little bit about that evolution and what that's done to help agencies.
Yeah. It's funny enough, everything I would say you were like the examples that you're mentioning, I would at some point I would attribute them to either a trigger, like to someone thought they knew something. That, for example, one of my I'm trying to find. There was a favorite quote of mine that I saw the other that I read. Uh, I would say when I fired myself from AgencyZoom, I hired myself on QQ, which I'll tell you about that story, as I was trying to rediscover myself. And it says it's what gets you trouble. It's not really what you know. It's what you thought you knew, but it wasn't exactly so. I don't know who exactly wrote it, right? So, oftentimes um, uh, I get approached by agents and they come and tell me to give them a demo or ask me to give them a demo or tell them about AgencyZoom. And I always flip it around and say, before I tell you about AgencyZoom, tell me a little bit about the problem you're trying to solve. Inside your agency, what are you trying to achieve right now? Right? And if you tell me, if you know exactly what that problem is, then I can quickly tell you, right, if AgencyZoom is the right solution or not and why. Because it becomes the solution becomes very easy to understand if we have a better understanding of the problem that we're trying to solve. Oftentimes we jump straight to the solution without really knowing. But so how all this helped us sort of like the evolution to where AgencyZoom is today. I'll tell you a story. So I'm going to skip between 2015 and 2018. I'm going to skip that entire part. One of our first conferences that we did for the independent space, we went in prior to being an independent, prior to building AgencyZoom where it is today. It was actually just an onboarding tool for Allstate agents and plus a couple other functionalities. And then we converted to being an independent a CRM that addresses the independent market. But the first attempt at that was in 2018 when we took AgencyZoom to a conference. I don't remember the name of that conference. And we had no clue what we were doing, obviously. And we went in and we quickly figured out that we have no clue what we were doing, right? The terminology that we were using, everything that we were using was not was not familiar to the independent agents. And I see agents kind of go through that entire same process all the time. They approach something with a lot of passion, a lot of like with the right intention, but then they hit a wall. Right? Now, the difference between who continues to be successful and not are really the ones that are either prepared to hit this wall, they knew that they didn't know, and continue on because they set the right expectations, they reacted accordingly, and they had the right mindset that prepared them for hitting a wall, and they put in the right effort, and that allows them to move forward. Versus those who just like hit a wall and they get shocked and then they pause and they end up going in the same circle over and over and over and over again. It's an endless cycle of jumping straight to the solution. So simply because of all of that, and we really learned that earlier on. And you ask me why AgencyZoom it is today. It's simply because we we knew that we didn't know, therefore we kept talking with the customer. We made sure that the customer is the center of conversations. Every single time we thought of an idea, we tested an idea, we release a feature, the agent is front and center of it. So the evolution of AgencyZoom is simply the evolution of the agent needs. It's the evolution of the conversation that we had. So we started off as onboarding, but that's the captive market. And then we completely pivoted into the independent market, and we just followed the money. You said something that's really interesting. You said that we're a sales organization. Um, this is something that Toga used to say all the time. I'm going to steal his line. Every time he used to demo, he used to explain that sales is the root and service is the fruit, right? Sales is the root of it all. So we had to really shift our focus and understand, first of all, let's develop an identity. So we have many conversations with agents. We get a lot of ideas. We say no many times, right? The number of times that I had to say no to like turning AgencyZoom to an AMS or a RAID or et cetera, because we wanted to focus on exactly a couple of things. We wanted to focus on the activity that takes time away from sales and the activity that takes time away from service. That's it. If we focus on those activities and automating them and streamlining them, we leave the agent, or more importantly, the producer, with the time and the tool in order for them to do what they do best, which is sell. AgencyZoom is just a tool that's designed to help the agency grow. And we do that through automation. And the way they evolved to what it is today is simply by keeping in mind that we know nothing. The people that are in this industry every single day know best. Let's keep them in the conversation, and let's make sure that we deliver on our promise and continue on and press on no matter how many walls we hit.
So when you were getting feedback from, these agencies, were you hearing the same thing over and over again and you're like, okay, we're going to go in this direction? Or was it a kind of a mixed bag of results? Like, how did you end up focusing on, um, where you wanted to go with things, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Great question, Kyle. So a couple of things. I think for us, it's if we heard one thing from one customer and we immediately implemented it, that's even if you got lucky, it doesn't matter. It's a knee-jerk reaction.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, when I say embrace not knowing, etc., that doesn't mean you're like, oh, you pause. No, that opens up your mind completely. It's a mind shift. So that because knowing that you don't know, having the right attitude to wanting to complete something and the willingness to put in the effort, what you end up with is a recipe for success, no matter what you do. So, at the end of the day, I think, how would I say this? It really, to me, is just a matter of, sorry, I lost my train of thought real quick. Bring me back to the conversation. Sorry.
Yeah, no, just I was trying to figure out if there was something that you were hearing over and over again
Yeah.
in terms of feedback
Same.
where you're like, okay, we need to do this. And
Yes. So the first time we hear something, okay, that sounds interesting. Second time that we hear it, there's something there. The third time that we hear it, maybe we'll need to look into it. So what I was trying to say earlier is as long as we don't have knee-jerk reactions, and as long as we operate based on data, because we want to learn, and when you think about it from that perspective, then you have to be able to, validate the hypothesis. So if you give me an idea and I hear it 2 or 3 times, the next thing I'm probably going to be doing is picking up the phone and calling customers and saying, hey, here's an idea that I heard. What do you think of this? Right? And I have to make sure that I do this across the board, different personas of customers, in order for me to get the best sample size that represents the wider net of my users. right? Otherwise, I'm operating in silo and I'm only impacting, the agencies that speak the loudest. So I have to make sure that I understand that there's agencies that are, that are silent, and oftentimes we reach out to them and we ask them, hey, what do you think? In addition to this, we still don't know 100% if this is a good idea. What we do is we test it, right? So once we release, we have a way for us to test. So for example, one of the things that we're releasing right now is functionality called Smart Search. I'm happy to talk about it a little bit if we need to. But we have it tested across 400 plus agencies just to make sure that it's working as expected, etc. And even once we release it, we have a feedback loop that just to make sure that we have achieved the goals that we wanted to achieve.
I want to go back to something, man, and I think it's
Yeah,
important to highlight this because it's something that agents need to be paying attention to, and it has absolutely nothing to do with Vertafore AgencyZoom as much as it has to do with how to be an effective salesperson. And it goes back to what you said your first question is. I think so many times we've all experienced this, whether it's ourselves doing it at the point of sale or when we go to buy something, but somebody walks in and asks you a question about AgencyZoom or they want you to demo it. And your first question is, what's the problem you're trying to solve? How many salespeople actually have the discipline to ask that question? And the answer is very few. I mean, my buddy Josh Braun literally just put something out on this today. And or yesterday, I remember reading it. But I think it's something that if you heard and that just sort of skated by, I wanted you to stop and think about that for a second, because this is generally applicable to what we do every single day. Too many times do we get an inbound lead who says they want to buy a policy, but we don't even know what it is that they're trying to solve. What's their problem? And the more you detach from the outcome of actually selling them something they may or may not need, and you focus on solving the problem that's in front of them, you end up with a better buyer's experience for that person who's reached out to you.
100%. Yeah,
You
and
end up with
it
a
shows that
better
you care.
client. You end up with a better client in the long run because they know that you're not just going to sell them, something specifically because they called and asked for it. You want
Yeah,
to make sure you're doing the right thing. And so if you're a newer producer out there, you know, you're going to have opportunities to get deck pages and loss runs and all of those things. But I would challenge you to make your first question, what problem are you trying to solve, or what has
what are
led
your
you to believe that you
yeah,
need this? You know what I mean? And get to the real root cause of what's going on, because it's never that they need to buy a new product. They may want to, but there's a lot of things you can solve by not having to necessarily buy something new. But if they come back and their answer is, well, we've gone as far as we can by manually tracking this stuff, we want to throw some automations in around client birthdays and even some drip email campaigns and
yeah,
things like that. And rather than, try and cobble together an email marketing software with our agency management system with this, we're looking for a unified solution. Okay, great. This is an ideal prospect for you at that point. But they could come back and their product or their problem may be completely unrelated to what your product is going to do. And you just wasted their time and yours and gave them a bad experience. Whether you realize it or not, man, that's really good sales advice for people that I don't think that they always follow. They're more interested in selling the product instead of solving the problem. And if you solve the problem, you're always going to end up selling product.
it's one thing that we were from day one. We were never. Um, the whole reason of building agency was never so we could sell. Because if you only focus on that, you will never be successful. Quite honestly, like you have to. There has to be a greater cost to it. And if I'm an insurance agent, I mean, look at what the industry we're in. We're in the industry of trust. We have an opportunity to have amazing conversations. I mean, I've never sold a policy, right? I've never sold an insurance policy, to be honest. So I have no clue how to sell insurance. But man, when you pick up the phone every single time, that's a new opportunity to network. Forget the commission for a second. If you focus your effort on the honest, I truly believe this, but remember, I know nothing about selling insurance, so take it with a grain of salt. But if you focus your efforts on actually holding a good conversation with that person, you might talk about everything but insurance, and you'll sell them way more than what you sold them, what you could probably sold them. I truly believe that, because if you ask the right questions, they may have approached you for auto, but now you've just learned that they have a plan to buy a new home next year. Their ambition is to build own a home, a boat. They have ambitions to open a business. You just figured out a lot of things by not just trying to sell them an auto policy because that's what they reached out to you for. So not only it's important to ask to understand what the problem you're trying to solve, but you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you're uncovering by having these conversations. And at the end of the day, what you'll end up having is, unlimited access to a lot of people. I mean, imagine the number of people that you speak with every single day as a sales producer. Like, to me, that's a huge opportunity to network with someone, get to know them. You never know what kind of, where the conversation leads to. At worst, I would say they will purchase what they originally intended to buy from you. Right? If
Yep.
you just have an honest conversation, actually really care. That's the most important part. Actually really care. Ask more questions and speak less. You just do that, you will sell way more. I truly believe that personally. But I've never sold a policy. So
No, but I've
take
been in the room with plenty of people who talk themselves out of deals because they just can't be quiet.
Mm-hmm. Dude, that was the number one thing. I've brought this up on the podcast before, but back when I was doing the office supply B2B sales, man, like the newer reps, when they would lose out on deals, it would be at the end of like the pitch and we're dropping the close on them and they just don't shut up. They keep going and going.
Features and
then,
benefits, man. Features and benefits. They just
dude,
want to spit
it's overwhelming. It's
That's
overwhelming for people. They're like,
much.
they're like, well, maybe this isn't just as simple as like me needing to buy some toner for my printer. Maybe I need to think about this a little bit, and then it never ends up happening. Yeah, I mean, there's been tons of situations where I've had people call in and they're looking for whatever, let's say auto, and I'm like looking at all the stuff that they're telling me and why they're looking. I'm like, hey, I'm not going to waste your time. Like you're in a good spot. And we go and have some conversation about now maybe you want to add an umbrella to give yourself a little extra layer of protection, because you've got 10 and there's been several times where I don't end up closing that deal, but they're like, hey, I'm gonna get back with you like next year when the rest of my stuff renews, but can I have so and so call you there? And just from a simple conversation of not trying to sell them something, but really just educating them on what they have and what might make sense for them.
Such a long way.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, if you like, one of the most interesting things is, people say all the time, agents say all the time, we don't sell premium, don't sell premium. Look, what are we selling at the end of the day? We're not sell. What we're selling is trust. Like, that's what we're selling, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the idea of trust. Like, that's the contract that we're selling, a contract between a carrier and this insurer. That's what we're selling. And the best way to build trust is through a relationship. And the best way to build a relationship with someone is get to know them, have an honest conversation, like pause, let them speak, ask a question. And you probably don't even need to talk about insurance, and you can still sell insurance.
We never talk about insurance. Never.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm being serious when I say this, but I mean, you're proving a point that we talk about on the podcast all the time. Insurance is the funding mechanism to buy the value prop. We find out what your problems are. Insurance is a symptom of a much larger problem. If your premium goes up, it's not because an underwriter arbitrarily handed you a rate increase. It's because your building has bad construction, or you haven't had it updated in a reasonable amount of time, or you've had auto losses, or you've had work comp issues, or you don't have a return to work program, or you don't understand what soft costs are that are associated with losses. So if we can find out what's really driving it, we can help you with solutions to the problems that are really causing your monetary pain, which are never the insurance itself. The insurance is the last piece you go to. And if we can come in and demonstrate to you that we, number one, are going to ask the questions we need to ask to understand your business, then demonstrate that we actually understand what you told us, and then give you a cursory review of what we would do over the next 12 months to get you back on the rails and fix it the right way. Why would you want to pay me an additional service fee to come in and consult with you when you can allow me to place your insurance and use the commissions derived from that process to fund what we do? You're getting more for less because you're using money you're already spending instead of bringing me in as a consultant. And so it's one of the reasons why we never go out and just shotgun the marketplace with insurance submissions. It's one of the reasons why we're very careful as to who we will bring in by asking the right questions. Not everybody's a great prospect for us. Unfortunately, our industry's done a really good job of teaching people if they just go out to market and get as many quotes as they can, they'll automatically find one that fits their budget. When the reality is the cheapest insurance policy is almost always the most expensive. There's plenty of places that you can cut costs in your budget that are outside of the insurance premiums that you don't even know.
Yeah, it's expensive to be cheap. I mean, that makes total sense. And like how I see somehow, we a little bit segued off topic, but in terms of like agents and how they can, one thing I would like to hit on is when approaching new solutions, new technologies, because I'm at the center of that. I talk to agents that are always talking about solutions and new tools and solving new problems. And one thing that we often forget is that there's 1,000 ways to solve a problem. And I always see this, a pattern in agencies across the board. For example, one thing that's really interesting, a really interesting observation is wanting the product to evolve to their process versus evolving their process to evolve to the new technology.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's the other big thing that I notice, in addition to not knowing the problem, is you have to be able to embrace change. This industry is changing at a rapid pace, right? And we have to be able to be reactive and embrace this change. So we cannot just, stick in try to figure out how can we automate an old process. Well, what if there's a completely new way of doing it, right? One of the biggest things that I see is that friction in the wrong places. Like we're not empowering our employees as we should be. We have to figure out a way to remove friction so that our producers are also able to sell. So having the right conversations is one thing, right? So often you mentioned that we oftentimes talk ourselves out of a conversation. We also oftentimes burn ourselves out. And we're in an industry we have to make so many calls. Our job is difficult as is. So when we approach solutions, we have to approach things from a simple, holistic solution that makes sense. If it's too complicated to understand, if I have to put a PowerPoint presentation to go over a process, then it's too complicated of a process. So we have to also be able to simplify our process so that our employees can focus on selling, providing them the right tools, giving them the right education, which is really, it's as simple as, hey, just have a conversation and embrace failures. And because when you do that and you have the right effort, it's okay. That's just a way for us to learn and move forward.
Yep. I feel like you mentioned earlier, and I may have misheard you, but did you bring up QQ Catalyst?
Yeah, I did.
Talk about it.
Yeah, happy to. So last year, so when we got acquired by Vertafore, we were supposed to stay on for 2 years, and sometime in May of last year, I was asked to take on QQ, and one of the things that we wanted to do is to essentially build the next generation of AMS, and going back into what I mentioned earlier about the whole embracing the unknown and how I fired myself and rehired myself, is I approached it with the right attitude, the right mindset, but with the wrong mind, with the wrong processes and thoughts. I approached QQ, a product that has been there for 2 decades, from the same mindset of building a new product, which you cannot do because you have to, what worked before is not necessarily going to work again. So what I ended up doing back in December, I told myself I'm firing AgencyZoom Mo and I'm hiring QQ Mo. And I picked up books and started to read and started talking to customers, and I basically had to relearn a lot of things. And one of the biggest changes, one of the biggest things that I've learned, that it's all really about the people and the importance of keeping things simple. So what ended up happening is we brought on my dev partner, Xiaoben, who also helped us build AgencyZoom, to the QQ side. And for the past 5 months or so, we've been really working hard on rebuilding the foundation of QQ, so that we can focus on the next generation of what the market is demanding from an agency management system. And to me, the main thing when I look at an agency management system, it's all about the data. I mean, the entire industry, it's data. So, an agency management system that doesn't have accurate data and complete set of data and gives you access to all this data as you need it, when you need it, is not an effective solution in my mind. I mean, you ask anyone what is an agency management system, they'll tell you that it's where I go for my policy data, right? It's a policy management system, often people call it, right? So that's really what we're focusing on right now, is rebuilding that foundation. And we're making great progress. We have a long journey ahead. There's a lot of work ahead, but we're really excited to have this opportunity, and it's a way for us to continue contributing back to this industry, which we love so much, and it gave us more than we can ever repay.
So I think that's kind of been like what I'm reading, not necessarily even between the lines. You just kind of described it, is you're on the QQ side because you've already been on the AgencyZoom side, and you're racing to see, not necessarily racing, probably not the best word, but you're working toward having a unified solution that's AMS, CRM, both, right? Did I miss that? Or is that what you're saying in so many words? Because I think that's kind of been the holy grail everybody's been trying to get to, and nobody's figured it out yet. I'm not a developer, so to me, I look at problems like this and I'm just like, we can put a man on the moon. How can we not figure this out so far? But it seems to be like it's a really relatively large undertaking. And even with some of the legacy systems that are out there, like Salesforce, I know that Salesforce has developed integrations, and I'm not one to necessarily call out names. This is not in a negative light, so I'm comfortable doing it. But Salesforce and Applied have an integration with Epic. I've heard both sides on that. Some people love it, some people don't. I think that the problem is taking something that wasn't necessarily designed for our industry and trying to have it sit on top of something that was. Like, again, I don't know development and programming, but I understand at least enough of like database logic and how that stuff is constructed to think that is a pretty big undertaking, probably much less if you actually build the product from the ground up, or be in a situation where you're at right now, where you can take something like QQ Catalyst, which, let's be honest, man, you don't hear a lot of people like that. Wasn't the buzz. Nobody was saying, I'm going to get on QQ. You didn't hear that like you heard some of the other things. So maybe it was more, I don't want to say it was dormant, but maybe it just wasn't, as fluid is what some other things were. And now Vertafore comes in, they acquire AgencyZoom. That gives them a really good opportunity to take one of their legacy products that maybe didn't have the juice that they wanted it to, throw some coin behind it, and now come out with something that's going to be their most robust offering of all of them, is what I could see happening.
Well, I appreciate the roadmap, man. Thank you for that. That was really good. But the only thing I want to change is one thing. I want to make sure that people understand, don't assume that we're going to merge them together as one system, right?
Right. No. So, good point. But I also think too that once you figure that out for one product, it makes it a whole lot easier to solve the riddle for others as you go through.
Yeah, the riddle is data, because it's like, let's put systems aside for a second. Let's just go up market in terms of technology. Like go to Ivans, for example, right? How many carriers, parent and riding carriers they have? I think 400 out of the thousands, give or take, somewhere around there. You have, you're either an agent. Like I was talking to an agent the other day. Is like, if the carrier does not download, I will not do business with them, right? So, but that really can limit your market. So you're between, the agent is sometimes between a rock and a hard place. So the problem, if we're going to talk about really where the true problem I see across the board, I would go up a couple levels and focus on what the carriers are doing. What are the carriers doing to help the agents? How can the carriers come together in a way to solve this problem across the board? Because if there was, imagine, let's call it the nucleus of this industry. Let's imagine if there was this database, this magical database with an open AI that allows any type of technology to go in, and you, with your permission as an agent, to go and share this data with this new tool, this new CRM, etc. Imagine the innovation that would happen in this space. Let's not focus on the tools that exist today. Imagine the amount of innovation that exists in this space if all the data, 100% coverage, existed in a way and it's accessible. Like, to me, the core problem, it goes back to data. So what are we doing about it is really what we can control, is based on is giving you, is downloading all the data that's available on Ivans, giving you ability to download any additional data that you need to, regardless of its format, and then giving you the ability to control and use that data as you wish. That's that's what I would call sort of like my framework that I'm trying to use for AMS. It's all around data. Now, if you say like reporting, well, that's just like a tool to utilize this data. Like I can have the most amazing reports without the data. They mean nothing, right? So I'm focusing on the nucleus of this industry, which is that data. And from there, the road is going to be, the roadmap is really going to be focused more, once we solve this data problem specific to our own world, right? Because I can only control my own world. Then how to give you the, access to this data in the most efficient and easy way possible. And that could be things, for example, like making it easier for you to generate accord forms, right? I have the data. Now I need to populate the accord forms. I'll make it easier for you to populate the accord forms. Give you access to all the data that you need in terms of in a format that's easy to understand, like reports, etc. Give you ability to export this data, ability to import this data, ability to use this data to generate triggers for automation, ability to use this data to generate leads. It's I keep going back to this, and I sort of detached from the functionality itself of the specific AMS, and I went to the nucleus of it all, which is just data. So summer of this year, we're releasing the first phase of what we're releasing for the foundation of QQ is we've gone back and we've done an audit of all the data that we have inside of QQ, compared it to what is downloadable, and we've identified the gap that we've identified. That's going to be part of our phase 1 release, is give access to all this data and then map it to all the core fields that we have access to. That's phase 1 of it. And then there's a phase 2 and phase 3 from there as well.
Cool. What have we not touched on, man?
I was gonna say, what have we missed? I feel like we've covered a bunch.
Last night's game.
Wasn't good.
I'm out of it, man. I don't watch NBA anyhow. I'm watching some of the hockey playoffs begrudgingly since the Lightning.
It's tough to watch without the Lightning in it, man. Just like I don't really watch the MLB postseason without the Rays in it, but I can watch the NBA. Mainly because it's fun to put parlays in and see how that goes. But actually, I would say that the NBA playoffs have been more entertaining this year than I can remember in recent years.
I never watched it either. I'm like David, but my son is 6 years old. He comes home every day, talking to his friends about, the game and whatnot. So, and he has no clue what's going on. So I started watching just so that, he has something to talk about with his friends, but it's still fun.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, listen, I wanted to just really quick thank Vertafore. They're sponsoring the Sunset Cruise for us at Producers in Paradise in Key West this year. You may or may not have heard that, Mo, and if you didn't, it's probably because they didn't want you coming and wanted to send some.
Hey, that's a legitimate reason not to tell me.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'd probably take that up with Mackenzie and Sid because they're the ones that are showing up. But just wanted to thank you for that, and also for what you guys do to support the agent community. I know that out of over 1,000 agents in our community, a very large number of them are AgencyZoom users, and as somebody who sits on the outside looking in, I just think it's pretty cool to kind of see where things are headed, and I'm looking forward to seeing the finished product, man, because I think it'll be great for the industry.
They'll never finish product. We're always
well,
evolving.
That's true. That's true. The next iteration.
Thank you for that, man. I really appreciate it. I honestly, just one thing to say, like this industry, I also I got asked this question the other day. Is like, why you're still like, why did we decide to continue on and stay and like took on this big project to QQ, and it really goes back into how much this industry has done for us. It's like talking about the unknown. I still remember these agencies that first signed up for, after having a couple conversations with us, with me and my business partner Toga, seeing a demo and then signing up for this product that they've never heard before, trusting their business for it. Man, I don't know if I would have been able to do that. So this industry is really near and dear to my heart. My goal is to stay in it for as long as I am working because I want to keep paying it back. And I just love the people in it, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity. So it really means so much to us. And hopefully, the road that we're on right now and the effort that we put in yields the results that we're hoping that they will yield, which is helping the agent at the end of the day, the small mom and pop agencies that are trying to make a living and support their families, continue to do so, without having, and taking the pain of running an agency. That's really all we can hope for. So appreciate the opportunity to speak, and hopefully you found it of value, and looking forward to chatting sometime in the future.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Lots of cool stuff ahead. Listen, if you haven't checked out what Vertafore has to offer, go check it out on their website. These people have products for days. Every time I turn around, there's something else tied to Vertafore. We were just recently appointed by Geico.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We were just recently appointed by Geico, and we had to go through Circon in order to be able to have them do our background checks. I'm like, holy cow, Vertafore has their hands in this too. So listen, there's something to be said for that, though. I think that there's a lot of problems that agents have identified, and a lot of them that we try and solve on our own. That those solutions, sometimes they turn out great, sometimes they don't. I think there's something to be said for companies who have the deeper pockets, have the ability to truly invest in research and development the right way. We'll see. I think you guys are an experiment in progress to a certain degree, but I like where you're headed, and I think it's going to be a big splash.
Absolutely. And listen, people have heard it so kind. A lot of when people heard that we're selling, like they were, things are, they thought it was the end of the world. And agency Zoom, the dev team, me, my business partner, we're still same thing. They trusted us. Matter of fact, they trusted us. Obviously want to replicate what we're doing, across the board. They continue to fulfill their promises. And really, all I would say is there's a lot of people Vertafore. They really care, and we're whether you like the product or not. There's that I'm not gonna, that's a subjective thing. But one thing I can tell you for certain that there's a lot of people in the background working really hard because this is not an easy industry, and we're in it because of the people, not necessarily because it's a fun industry. And when you're working in the background, you're just you're solving these problems. That's not a it's a very tough job. It's a very tough challenge, and there's a lot of people that are taking it really seriously. And I'm so excited to be working with them because I've learned so much. Being in the center of all these different tools, and now at the other side of it, being part of Vertafore, there's and the number of different sectors within the industry that we touch. There's a lot that we can learn from each other. But I just want people to know that we're giving it 100%. Me and the team at Vertafore, and hopefully we will achieve our goals. And I'm looking forward to the future.
Cool deal.
Good deal. Well, listen, everybody, you have been listening to Moe Latif from Vertafore. Used to be AgencyZoom, fired himself, rehired himself under QQ Catalyst.
AgencyZoom.
There you go. Yeah, a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and I look forward to seeing it come out. So make sure you're staying abreast of all of it. And if you do not have processes, listen to the podcast. If you have processes and you need to take it to the next level, now is when you want to go ahead and pay attention to what's going on. But check out what their offerings are and call it a day. All right, guys, we'll catch you next time. See ya.